All right, so can we get this started or what?
We can.
Pedro is back, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Pedro, thanks for coming back and not. Pedro, he's about to bail on us. By the way, he was about to bail on us. I called him out, and he's here.
Damn.
How did you feel the first episode went with you on board, Pedro?
It was fun. It was fun to be here. It was very interesting to hear our conversation and get some comments too. So
Pedro went on YouTube with the Liquid Football Recruiting profile and commented about himself.
What a legend.
He didn't think people were going to notice that. All right, so where do you guys want to start today? We want to start U.S. soccer, Pedro?
sure,
Talk about your boy.
yeah, always.
All right, so this has happened. This has already been like a couple months now that they reappointed Greg Berhalter, but we don't really talk too much about U.S. soccer. But just wanted to get your thoughts, Pedro, first of all, on the reappointment.
It was quite the process. I felt like the U.S. soccer sold it as a soul searching. With this new, I think it's a sporting director or technical director or whatever that new role was. That was supposed to start a new search for a new coach after the World Cup. It was kind of disappointing to see that Greg was coming back. Not the worst tenure as a coach, but also some weird things. I think he's definitely not getting the most out of all the potential and all the talent that he has at his disposal, which I think is the highest level we may have had in U.S. soccer history. So seeing him come back and also say some statements like it was always the plan to have an 8-year plan with me at the helm or something like that he said the other night during an interview was kind of disappointing because it made me wonder, was there even a genuine process to try to find a new replacement for Greg, or was Greg the plan all along?
You know that they hired an outside firm to look for a new head coach. Right?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
I did hear that.
So they hired a company. They hired a company supposedly to be from an outside, not from within the organization, to go look for a new head coach. And basically, after all of their research and all of the money that they received, they came back and said, Greg Berhalter is your best choice.
Isn't like Oguchi on part of the? Wasn't he part of the process? I remember he was on one of the only games I ever watched MLS like a few months ago, and he was there and they were interviewing when the news first broke out, and they were talking about like the hiring, that how everybody's like Clint Dempsey's like, I'm disappointed, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then obviously they played on the national team together, they're friends, so he came on and he said, yeah, we looked through everyone, I was part of it, this and this. So it's kind of interesting to see that like even experienced players that play for a national team and have all the knowledge, you come back and just rehire a coach that obviously didn't work out before. And just the drama. I mean, I don't know too much about it, to be honest. I just know there's a bunch of drama and
Yeah.
like why would you fire the guy, have all that drama in between?
It was like a temporary leave or suspension or whatever
Yeah,
it was. That was the official term.
Well,
How much of it do you think was the candidates that they really wanted declined the position? Because there was a few. Zinedine Zidane did not even entertain talks. He said they reached out to him, and he said he wasn't interested. You got to think that there's probably, if they really did their searching, and if you think about how many coaches there are out there who are actually quality, they probably went through a couple European coaches. How many of them do you think, or how much of it that they had to reappoint him was the fact that they just couldn't find anybody who wanted the position?
probably a decent amount. I mean, it's similar. Like to me, it sounds like. Is it the same as it's players from Europe and South America, like top players, coming to the MLS? Is that this? Is that U.S. job viewed the same as a player making a move? Like Zidane coming from one of the best.
Well,
Do you like? I mean, you watch more, you know more
I
about
think
it.
that the point here is that you have to go very, very deep to go from Zidane, who is probably one of the best coaches in the last 20 years, to Greg as the best option, right? There are at least 50, 60 coaches there that could have been that replacement that we don't know the story of. But yeah, I don't think I think if you are a guy that loves soccer, you also understand that the United States has such a huge potential, and you will take it on a challenge too. I think you could attract, you know, better. I mean, if you equate it to an MLS player, I think you could find much better talent, and it will be much easier for you to convince a coach to come coach the national team than a top talent player to be a designated player in the MLS, in my opinion.
I don't know. I disagree. I think if you think about it as a coach, first of all, a national team job is already not the greatest job. It's great in terms of bucket list. You can cross it off your bucket list, and to say that you've managed the national team is pretty awesome. But think about the fact that a national team job is very little coaching and actual management, and more so just making sure you pick the best players, because you only get the national team for, I mean, when they do international breaks, you get them for about a week, right? They come straight from their club season or whatever. They go for a week, and then they have a game, and then they go right back. The only time you really get them for an extended period of time is during the World Cup, when you might get them for like a month before. But in reality, it's not like a proper team where you have a whole preseason. You can apply like certain tactics. You can have a whole playing style planned. When you got the national team, you're taking players who are playing with completely different playing styles from each other, and you're throwing them on the field, and you're basically saying like, just do your best. So I think that's one of the reasons why a coach probably wouldn't want to take the job, because not only is your player pool already limited because you can only get the Americans, but then on top of that, you can't really coach them the way that you would want to coach them as if it was a club team. So if I'm a European coach and I know I'm only going to get these players for a week at a time, and on top of that, I can't get any European players, I mean,
Yeah, I think the selling point here could be also that if you are that kind of game changing talent as a coach, something like Messi is right now for the MLS, you get to also design things like the training curriculum or
Yeah.
the plan, everything,
that's what
how the
Klinsmann-
youth system is correct.
yeah,
But Yugi was not the level of Pep Guardiola, for example.
yeah.
I have always fantasized about somebody that somebody like Guardiola taking over U.S. soccer and changing the way that we are coaching our youth, changing a lot of things from within. I think that will be a huge challenge, but I also think that it's one of the biggest up and coming nations in the world in soccer, right? And there's plenty of resources, plenty of money, plenty of people willing to invest, plenty of people ready to buy into somebody at that level, like we're doing with Messi right now in the MLS. It could work.
Is it a missed opportunity now that the World Cup is going to be here, that you're not going to have a coach like that?
That's a great point too.
Yeah, I mean, so now whoever they hired, now that they hired Greg, but when they were searching, you would think that you're going to get the team until the World Cup at least, right? Unless something crazy happens in between. But I do think, to your point, Pedro, it's a bit of a project, right? So it's like, would you rather take over a team like, maybe Manchester City's not the greatest, a national team, if we're talking national teams, would you rather, like Germany, right? Where if you don't win, it's your fault, but if you do win, you're expected to win, so it's not that big of a deal. Or would you rather take over a project like the United States, where clearly there's a lot of things wrong here, but if you take them to, let's say, the semifinals of the World Cup, you're looked at as one of the greatest coaches in the world, and that obviously helps you for your resume. I agree. I think the fact that it's a project, and if you really are a good coach and you can manage to change the system, the U.S. soccer landscape, and really push the national team forward, it helps propel you to your next job. But at the same time, I think it's just, when coaches are looking at it, it's a big risk that they don't want to take, because if they don't do well, they're going to get less jobs. Like if you weren't successful with the United States men's.
That's why I think my top candidate for the job at the time, obviously Guardiola is impossible right now, being so happy at Man City, was Marcelo Bielsa. I think that's the one guy that wouldn't fear whatever repercussion in his career if it didn't work out. But that's a guy that will be fully invested, at least in the first 2 or 3 years onto this.
Why do you think he would have had to be on their list at some point, right? He would have had to been, whether it was the initial list or a list that was a little bit further down in terms of how many cuts they made or how many, how detailed it got. But why do you think Bielsa was not somebody that they really try to get?
I think he could have made a lot of demands, which U.S. soccer may have not wanted
Yeah.
to give in. And also, I think U.S. soccer may have seen him as an abrasive type of personality, because he finds very immediate success with his teams on the short term and medium term, but in the long term, he loses the locker room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
But like, to me, again, it goes to the point of not only are you taking over the United States job, but it's also, again, a national team where most of the coaches always talk about that's gonna be my ending, not my like stepping stone. Like Pep always talks about, oh, I would love to coach the national team. Not now. Jurgen Klopp, I want to coach the national team.
Ancelotti as well, right?
All of them. Oh, I want to do it, but not
Yeah.
now. It's always like I'll do it as like my last go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, typically you don't go from the national team to like a next step up when you go back down to club. So that's probably one of the reasons as well. It's like if
Yeah.
you're in the national, you either bounce from national team to national team, or you don't get as good of a position when you go back down to a club level.
I mean, I don't know. Like I just feel, again, if you're the selling point of the job would have been the World Cup is coming to the United States, and you're gonna have all this time to prepare. And if all these 20 or whatever how many candidates said no, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
To go back to somebody that obviously didn't work out before or whatever the situation was. So
Yeah, and I think the United States Soccer Federation, like Bielsa, for example, would not have been a good fit because, yeah, like Pedro said, he's going to make a lot of demands. His playing style is going to vary extremely from a 4-3-3, and U.S. soccer has been set on like a 4-3-3 for the longest period of time. When you do your coaching courses, you do everything in a 4-3-3. All of the national teams have to play in a 4-3-3. So you think Marcelo Bielsa comes in and says, I want to change the formation, or I want to change the landscape and actually do a little bit. And I think he would have put his foot into the foundation, grassroots and stuff as well, right? He wouldn't have just said, I want to be the national team coach, but he would have said, we need to change it from the bottom. And I don't think they would have been willing to do it. But also, I think the culture part of it is a big one because the way he's looked at in South America, they still really appreciate someone who's going to push the boundaries of what is okay and what is not okay in order to push the players. And I think in the United States, that would have ruffled a lot of feathers to where they're like, culture-wise, people would have given the USSF a bad look. So I think Greg Berhalter is kind of an easy one because you can control him. You can tell him what to do. You can tell him what's okay. And they know he's not going to do anything crazy because he's on thin ice already. What I don't understand about Greg Berhalter is the fact that the relationship between him and Claudio Reyna, and also just the general team, is so damaged that I don't understand why in their report it said that there's no reason why he couldn't be hired again. Like there's a certain think about you as a player in the locker room, knowing all of the things that have happened with Greg Berhalter and Reyna. You don't respect the guy the exact same as you did before. So
I mean, they're gonna say they do, but it's human nature. You're just not going to.
And there's already reports that him and Balogun aren't getting along and things like that. So I think that was a terrible appointment, to be honest. I think most people can agree that wasn't the right appointment, regardless of whether they think he's a good coach or not, just because of everything that's happened.
yeah, especially when you had a candidate also that was homegrown already, similar profile to Greg's, Jesse, right? He had just left from the Leeds job. Was perfect candidate too if you wanted that same kind of profile.
You know who I wanted, and who said he would do it? Guess. Arsenal legend. The most Arsenal legend.
Wenger?
Nope.
Thierry
Henry. He said, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he said he wanted it. He was in, he does like the pundit stuff.
Yeah.
They asked him about it, and he's like, would I throw my name in the hat? Of course I would throw my name in the hat. I know the federation, I know the league, I know the players. How do you not give Thierry Henry the national team job? Players are going to respect him. He's an absolute legend. He's got some coaching experience.
But do you think
Not
that
a good one.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like,
yeah.
would you like?
Berhalter was average in the MLS, and they gave him the job.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to.
Like, if you're going to give it to Berhalter, you got to give it to Thierry Henry, or you got to give it to somebody who's got at least playing experience at a higher level. I'm just saying that was a missed opportunity. It could have been very easy. Now he's coaching the France U23 or U20s.
somewhere because they were talking about it today in the Champions League. That he's like, "Oh, what's up, coach?" And they were like giving him
U23s or U20s.
But was he when he coached? Where he coached in Monaco, right? For 6
Montreal
months.
as well.
Not even for 6 months at Monaco, and then Montreal. Did he do good there? Or
No, I think it was average.
average?
I don't think it was great. I don't know if they sacked him or not. They might have sacked him.
I
but-
believe so. Yeah.
And then, I don't know if they sacked him or did he go to? He went to the national team with
Belgium.
with
With Bob Martinez.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he wanted it, and that's an easy one right there.
yeah. Wasn't Martinez part of wasn't he?
I think so. I think he was on the list.
Roberto Martinez.
Yeah, but he's bouncing from
He's
everything.
in Portugal now.
Yeah, Portugal.
What a
Yeah,
legend. But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, think about him. He was what was the height of his career?
Everton, Wigan.
And then he goes to Belgium, and then after that, there's no,
Swansea. That was the highlight.
I mean, but the job, like now, you don't know where he is,
Portugal.
right? Think about. I mean, well, what I'm saying though is that he's not at like a big club. Like it didn't help him
Yeah.
going to a national team.
Well, you got to think.
Think about
You took over Belgium, and that was their gold generation, and they didn't do anything. So in a way, that makes you like, is it really going to help?
which is why I'm saying it's a tough job, right? Same thing with what was the Brazil national team coach that just got fired? Tite.
Tite. Yeah.
You don't hear about those guys as much anymore.
No, you don't. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think going to a national team, it's like once you go into a national team, you're staying there.
Yeah.
Like you can still find a job as in like.
Yeah, it's debatable. You know, for 20 years, everybody wanted Joachim Löw to leave Germany and coach for them. Luis Enrique went from Spain to PSG. Julian Lopetegui was fired from Spain because he got an offer from Real Madrid.
Yeah.
It's debatable.
And then you get
It's just
fired.
tough. It's just
Yeah.
tough. Like even if you think about people who took a project, right? So think about an example like Saudi Arabia, the Harv Renard, right? Does a great job of Saudi Arabia. I mean, yeah, he does because he beats Argentina, the only team to beat Argentina at this year's World Cup. And you think, okay, so now he's got to get a really good club job, and now he's coaching I believe it's the French women's national team.
Yep.
So it's like even that guy who did something impossible with a national team still doesn't get a job that he probably would have deserved to have. So, yeah, that's I mean,
Plus, national team, you literally. I don't know. I mean, you do your scouting, you watch, and you go to games, and you do all that stuff. Yeah, but you are actually coaching the players for a month or the whole year. So that's like
it's all about picking the right players.
Yeah, there's
Picking the right players, setting a good like team environment, and hoping that they do well.
Even for the World Cup, they prepare for a month. All those players that go into that camp are like burnt out. Because
come
they've had
straight
no
from
season.
club.
Yeah, so like, are you really coaching that much? Like, for the most part, you're not doing training sessions. You're just you're hoping the guys recover from one, injuries that they've had, and two, get their legs like as much rest as possible, and then that's it.
It's a tough job.
Yeah, my point was that, you know, the national team needs to take it to the next level, and I don't think Greg is going to get us there.
I agree. And that's why I like Klinsmann, because Klinsmann came in and he said, I'm not just going to be the coach, I'm going to be I believe it was the technical director, whatever other title he had that allowed him to set the curriculum and to set the ideas that they were going to start with USSF. And a lot of it was starting from the bottom, changing the coaching curriculum and things like that. And I thought Klinsmann was the perfect guy because of the experience that he had in Europe. I thought he was a good coach. I think the problem with Klinsmann that really is a big problem to United States was he had a plan that was a multi-year plan. It was like a 10-year plan. Klinsmann was like, this is going to work if you guys trust me for the next, decade or whatever. And U.S. Soccer was not patient enough to let him do it. Because I think if they would have waited a little bit.
But you could see some fruits of that labor, though. Throughout the last 5-6 years, all this young talent that has moved to Europe from academies, that whole academy system that was revamped during his tenure.
Which is why I'm saying I think they should have given him more time and let him kind of carry out the whole plan.
Yeah, that's why I think somebody like Pep would be able to gain that kind of time.
But why is that the thing in America? Why does it have to be
instant results?
No, I'm talking about in general. Like if a coach is taking over the U.S. job, why does it have to be a whole thing? Like, do we trust him to like rebuild from grassroots and everything? You never hear about
the system
any of that.
is very broken,
Yeah,
and the U.S. soccer is not fixing it.
I mean, has anyone talked about how broken the Spanish system is?
Or the German,
Yeah,
or the Dutch.
That's
or
what I'm saying. No,
French.
like when you take over as a head coach, nobody talks about oh, what are you gonna do with the league? What are you gonna do with the youth team? Nobody talks about
Yeah,
that stuff.
I think it's just because other countries are, a decade ahead of us in terms of like their development systems and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's why in all of those countries they don't need somebody to revamp the system. But in the United States, if you want to be good, if you want your national team to be good, you have to revamp your system within your country because those are the only players that you can pick from. So it's not like you can just say we have a lot of money and we're going to buy, clubs like we're just going to buy players. It's you literally can only focus on the development part of it because if your players are not developing, you're not going to be very good.
But then, at what point, if something doesn't work out, let's say, for example, new coach. It's not Greg coming back. Let's say it's a brand new coach. Oh, I'm going to revamp the whole entire system. Give me 10 years. They get knocked out in the group stages in the World Cup, get completely destroyed, and they're not even like on the same level any of those teams. You get fired, and you do the same thing. You
Right.
hire a new guy. Oh, rebuild the whole
Yeah,
system.
that's why you had to hire somebody of the profile of a Pep or somebody that's gonna be such.
You're never going to get anybody
But why
Pep's
can't you?
caliber.
Why can't you hire? You hire two people. You hire one guy that's actually going to revamp the whole entire system. Doesn't have to be the national team coach, just somebody completely separate from the national team coach.
Well, yeah.
And
They tried that already. They tried
yeah.
it with Claudio Reyna, who was Gio's dad, and
then-
did that 15 years ago. I think Oniegu is actually working on something similar right now.
I think Klinsmann, when he came in, he brought in a guy. I'm trying to remember if this is correct or not, but I believe so. Is that he brought in like another guy who was of like Asian origin, who was kind of also in charge. He was like his right hand man of like being in charge of changing things, and he wanted to implement like a different type of methodology from where he came from. But I don't think it worked very well, or I don't think it lasted long enough, or whatever it was, because I think he was with Klinsmann. So there was I don't know if it was with Klinsmann or without him, but it was a guy from like China or Japan or something. I think it was a Japanese guy who came in and was going to change the system. Didn't work out.
But and another thing, who wants to deal with that? Like, you think Pep is actually going to want to deal with like the politics that come with like
that is a challenge, you know. I mean, for a guy like Pep who's won everything, after 5-6 more years at City, probably winning a couple more trebles, what is he gonna do once he's 55?
But they're also
60?
asking. You're also asking a lot of people like Pep who probably aren't as focused in wanting to change, like the academy systems and the development. They just want to win. Like Pep wants to have the best team possible so he can win. Of course.
Yeah.
It's definitely been over 30 minutes, by the way.
No, it's not. 23.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Pedro, I've done this before, my friend. I've done this before. But we'll stop in like 5 or 6 minutes. Not a big deal.
Okay.
But why would Pep or anybody of that caliber even consider the job? Like you said, maybe in 10 years when he's old and he's like, I don't want to continue.
Just
coaching
out of
for-"
romanticism, honestly.
I
That's
wish.
the main.
you need to find a guy that really is going to be passionate about doing something like that. If you hire somebody that's a really good coach, they're going to like the whole. I don't want to say the whole point of going from like teams like Man City or Real Madrid's to national teams. Like usually those coaches are like, all right, I'm done doing the day to day. I kind of want to concentrate like few weeks out of the year, and then that's about it. What you're asking U.S. soccer is somebody that's going to come in, put in even more work to deal with other people's BS half the time, to change a whole entire country and do all of that and all of that energy to rebuild. It's just like
It has to come from outside because how are we gonna develop the next Pep Guardiola in the United States?
Here's my thoughts. Here's a crazy idea. You do it similar to Netherlands. Netherlands has their coaches already lined up. Each coach only gets 2 years. I don't know. This might be outdated information. Once again,
From the 70s,
Once again,
maybe.
Coach Javi doesn't do his research. No, but look it up. I'm pretty sure Netherlands has a 2-year cycles,
policy.
regardless of how well or how bad they're doing. But they already know like the next 2 people who are going to take charge. So Netherlands will say this guy's here for 2 years, and then the next person will be Thierry Henry in 2025, and then the next guy in 2027. So if I was U.S. Soccer, I would adopt some sort of a plan like that, where you say, okay, let's start with Greg Berhalter right now because they've already picked him. Thierry Henry, you're going to go work with Greg Berhalter for 2 years. You're going to be, you can say first team or national team assistant coach, and in charge of technical development of U.S. soccer. And then in 2 years, Thierry Henry, after he's completed his 2 years, will be the next manager. And then they bring in somebody else who Thierry Henry helps pick for the next 2 years. So now you have, instead of just one person who you trust, instead of just one person for the next 5 or 10 years, you start bringing people that you're going to give experience to, like you said, develop into the next Guardiola or whatever, giving them the incentive of knowing that after 2 years they're going to be the head coach. But they have to do their job, or they have to work together as a team in order to also help build the bottom part of the structure.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a horrible idea. I'm not sure that's what Netherlands do, though. I think they just rotate between Van Gaal and Koeman forever.
It looks like it, right?
Because they
I could
just
be
keep
wrong.
leaving.
I'm probably wrong.
Well, I mean, technically, it would work because you're gonna have the same ideology per se for the whole entire tenure of whenever you stop doing that, like rotation. But again, would a good coach, or okay, I don't know, Thierry Henry, would he want to be under Greg for 2 or 3 years or whatever?
Absolutely.
You think he would?
If he was guaranteed that in the next 2 years he would be the head coach of the men's national team, I think so.
Like a legit coach is
the problem is not a legit coach, right? So that's the problem that you face is if you say in the next 2 years,
it would have to be somebody that's trying to make their name into the game,
right?
And like somebody takes them under their wing.
Yeah, but then you start running into other kinds of issues, though. Like, look at the Mexican national team, right? They hire a lot of Liga MX coaches. Their top players do not play in Liga MX. They go to their national team. They don't respect that coach because they're being coached by, whatever legend in Europe on their top team in Europe. So they go back to their little Liga MX coach and they don't really respect that guy as much. You got to be careful because, if you start abusing that homegrown coach type of situation, you may run into other issues because most of your top players in the United States are playing overseas. And like I said, how are we going to develop the next Guardiola? I mean, we have a franchised top tier where, coaches that are young and, in their early 30s, like Guardiola, mid 30s, early 40s, like Guardiola was when he took over Barca, they're not really given the chance at the MLS level. And if they're former players that just retire, that it's their first job into coaching, that do not seem ready. There's also a very, very little patience in the MLS too for long-term projects. The league and how the contracts work make it so hard for you to revamp a team or make drastic changes within a team. How are we going to develop the next Guardiola, the next guy that breaks through age 37 and is changing the entire game? We may have it on USL 2 or USL 1 right now, being bored and making 30K a year,
Well, the thing about also the national team is it's hard to find someone. It's a very specific type of candidate because you can't put somebody who's a younger coach as often because it's the experience as well. You're dealing with guys who are the best wherever they're playing. Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with a lot more egos than if you're at an MLS club and you're trying to bring up some kids from the academy and you're dealing with only a few people. Every single person that goes to the national team is playing on their team. So how do you get people who are national team players being coached by someone with very little experience or less experience than someone like Zinedine Zidane or Guardiola or
Right.
Right.
So my point was, how do we get that in 10 years? We're not going to get it. We're always going to have to seek the Guardiola or the Zidane or the whoever if we want top level coaching, which this country needs, because we're failing to produce that here.
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time on that topic, by the way. That's a hot topic. But let's transition over to the next one. You mentioned his name a couple times, your boy Pep. You talk about how do we get the next Pep? Is Pep overrated?
I'll leave that to
We'll
Georgie.
start with the Liverpool fan.
I don't think Pep is overrated. Okay. However,
is he better than Klopp?
I want to say he's better than Klopp.
Would you rather take Guardiola over Klopp?
At Liverpool?
Yeah.
Klopp. Liverpool can't spend money.
Yeah.
Pep without money is not the same
How do you know?
because he's bought everywhere he goes. He's spent billions to make teams. Besides, you can argue
So you're saying he's
Barcelona.
overrated?
I'm not saying he's overrated. I'm just saying Klopp with the resources at Liverpool is a lot better fit, and the style and everything that he is, he's a lot better fit for Liverpool than Pep would be at Liverpool. Now, if you're talking about Man City or somebody that has a lot of money, it's completely different. Just Pep needs to spend money, and you see it transfer window after transfer window. He does not. There's no. I don't want to say there's no loyalty, but even he talks about it. There's no loyalty here. Like you're gonna win for 1-2 years, and then you're gonna go out. Look at all the players that have won. Like if you compare Klopp at Liverpool ever since he came and Pep, when Liverpool won, what did Klopp do? Nothing. He bought one player, kept the same exact team.
Yeah.
You don't have the money, you don't have the resource. What does Pep do? He wins the Champions League, gets rid of not a lot of the players, but decent amount of players. Have them went to Arsenal, like ships them out. No loyalty. I don't care. On to the next one. Buy the new one. Like, and you spend 70, 80 million on a guy that is barely going to play. Kevin Phillips, amazing at Leeds, 40, 50 million.
Right.
2 years now. He's started maybe 4 games.
Yeah.
But that's how you win. And in this day and age, you need to keep doing that to win. And obviously, they're winning everything. So why it's working.
Yeah.
And he's a really good coach. It's not like he's not a good coach. You need to have both. He can control the egos. You can spend the money and bring in those players with like their paychecks are in the millions, and you can like control them. Like you need to be some sort of a manager, or, like obviously a good coach and everything that he brings. However, I will say, up until last year in the Champions League, he was way overdoing it with Man City. Like every single time there's a big game, he would do something completely like Kyle Walker's playing center mid or something
Or
weird.
Like not playing with a true holding center mid or whatever.
Yeah, and that would usually, for the most part, and Manchester City in the big games would usually backfire.
Yeah.
But again, that's like one game. But when you look at his whole tenure at Man City, obviously he's done an amazing job. They keep winning.
Yeah.
But
I think
does Pep win without the money?
Well, that's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't think you can blame him for the fact that
No.
that they have money, right? So it's not up to him. He's never had to be put in the position where he didn't have money. So
He did on Barcelona's B team.
he was there for one season, so he did a good job, right? So I agree. So yes,
Pedro, Busquets.
yeah. So he got Barcelona
Yeah.
B. Yeah, of course.
But that's different. Like he played there, he moved up, he went through the system, he knows the system, he did the system.
So you have to give him the credit though, because he did. They weren't doing very well. He came in and he did a good job. And then, I mean, was it even a year before they promoted him to the first?
It was a year, and then he won everything on his first year.
And he had Messi.
He had
So, like,
Messi,
again-
but he also had a pretty broken team too at Barcelona that Rijkaard had left him. With,
Right.
With Eto'o, with
Zlatan, right? Or no, he bought Zlatan or what?
They bought Zlatan,
Yeah,
I
that
think,
was
later, but
later.
it was like Ronaldinho. He was the one that I
Deco.
would say he was the one, but to get rid of Ronaldinho,
Again,
Deco and Eto'o.
back to my point. There's no like with him. There's no like if you're not performing, you're
Right.
out. There's
Right.
no nonsense here.
the crazy thing about that though is that the best player in the world, he gets rid of the best player in the world and says, "We need you to go in order for me to make this team better." And because of that decision, which very few people would have ever made, he created probably the best team in history. That Barcelona team from 2009 to 2012 was the best team in history so far, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
That's impressive, right? So I think if you're Pep Guardiola, first of all, you've never really had to be in a situation where you didn't have money. So that's a good thing. And if you're going to have the money, you might as well buy the players that you think is going to give you the best chance of winning. Same thing with Holland. They had a team that was stacked in terms of you already have an A team, you have a B team on the bench who's just as good. And then on top of that, he says, well, we need Holland. And then he wins the Champions League.
Was this time at Bayern Munich a failure?
No, he broke records at Bayern Munich as well. That's what people don't say. The first year was difficult because he had to adjust to the German system, and he had to also trying to implement his style without. I read his book, and he tries not to go crazy implementing his style because he knew that he also had to adapt to the German playing style. But he did break records in terms of like the amount of points and wins and things like that. It was one of the season's second or third season. It was crazy how far ahead he was of everybody else. I don't know. It's one of those things. What he's done that's different than everybody else is that he's taken teams that you have to win, otherwise it's your fault. And even if you win, you don't get the credit, and somehow still manages to get credit for those teams winning.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the money. Like PSG spent an incredible amount of money and has reached nothing with it, right? You had to look at the impact that Guardiola has had in the game. That team was the best team in history. It also allowed for the national team of Spain to win 2 Euro Cups and 1 World Cup consecutively.
Yep.
If you look at the coaches right now, Arteta, coach with Pep. Xavi Alonso, coach by Pep. Xavi Hernandez, coach by Pep. He's creating, a whole movement of the way that you coach, the way that you manage a game, etc. He's the best coach in history, in my opinion. It's no doubts. Johan Cruyff may have come close to that, to have that kind of impact in soccer history, but without a doubt, Pep is the best in history. And, that's coming from an Atletico Madrid fan.
I do agree. I think when you look back at like some of the things that have changed the game, I think Pep Guardiola is one of those names that has changed the game in terms of
he's definitely changed
his influence.
the style and the influence, of course. Like the Barcelona teams, like onto the Spain national teams, like being one of the best. Like that was pretty much started with Pep. But when you go into club teams, okay, put it this way: can Pep take? I don't want to say Chelsea because they spend money. A team like Spurs. They spend decent amount, but a team like Spurs.
Yeah.
If he goes to Spurs right now, is he able to within 2-3 years, whatever you want to give him? Is he able to do it without spending the billion in the first 5 years that he did at Man City?
I don't think anybody is. I think the influence of all the things that need to happen in order for that to happen are far beyond just the coach. You need to spend money in today's market. You absolutely need to spend money. I think it's a process. I think Klopp is a really good example of that because, again, you bring in Klopp, you tell him we're going to trust you, we're going to give you a few years, not just if you lose 2 games in a row, we're going to sack you like Chelsea does. And if you really believe in what they're doing and you believe them to be a good coach, then it'll pay off. Liverpool was on top of the world for a little bit, right? Not too long, but a little bit. And they were challenging Manchester City. It's like telling anybody to go to Everton and make Everton win the Premier League in 3 years. I don't care how good of a coach you are. It's not going to happen. Unless you have, every once in a while, you have outliers like Leicester. But even Leicester won the Premier League, and then where are they now?
And it takes a lot to convince top-level players to want to play for you. It takes a lot to convince Erling Haaland to go play for Man City when he has 30 offers on the table from the best clubs in the world with all the money they have in their bank account. It also takes a lot of knowledge and principles to have an idea of a system or a way you want to play and implement it no matter what, and be successful at it and believing on that too. And I think it also takes a lot, like Javi said, to make decisions like seeing the end of a generation that has brought a lot of success to your club to bring on a new one that you hope you can succeed again with. And that's what he did in Barcelona. That's also what he got rid of a couple of players at, Manchester City recently that were, fan favorites like Mahrez and, other guys.
Yeah.
That's maybe what, clubs should have done too with people like Sadio Mane or even Mohamed Salah when he got that huge offer this summer too.
That's one thing I admire about Pep is he's ruthless. Like he doesn't care. Like they just won. I'm gonna rebuild this team. Like I don't. It doesn't really matter.
Very few ex-players of his don't like him. Very few.
Zlatan is one of them.
Zlatan is the clear one because obviously Zlatan doesn't like him.
Yeah.
But when you have such a big personality, if a coach tells you you're not part of his plans, then of course you're not going to be very happy, regardless. I'll tell you what. One of the reasons why Guardiola is also very good, in my opinion, is he is probably the only coach at this level who had, since his time at Manchester City or even Bayern, has never been in the news or been in the tabloids or talked about by the press as someone who might get sacked soon because of the results. If you think about it, have you ever seen stories where you can tell with certain, like Frank Lampard when he was at Chelsea, like when he was right about to get sacked, everybody knew he was going to get sacked. It happened with Pochettino, and it happened with Mourinho.
The only year was the first year where when he first came to City. That was the only year when it was like.
But they never. I don't ever really
Yeah.
remember anyone ever being
No,
like,
no.
"Oh, Pep might get fired. He might get sacked.
No,
he might
it
get
was-
sacked if he loses
yeah.
this game."
But
It's crazy because the standards
It
are
is crazy.
super high of
I
Manchester
mean,
City.
even fan groups or like Twitter accounts, you don't really see that
Yeah.
from him.
But like,
That's impressive.
why would you ever like? For example, Pochettino, like that's since like at Spurs, the guy built. I don't want to say he built Spurs, but he did.
Yeah.
He transformed Spurs.
He took
be-
them to where they are now, the expectation that they've been trying to get out of the last few coaches, for sure.
Yeah, and since he left, they haven't
Right.
been the Spurs to what Spurs were
Until now.
until now. Yeah,
Good start.
Yeah,
They like this guy.
yeah. No, I like him too. To do what he's doing without Kane.
Even
too.
your boy Klopp, last season, there was a lot more people starting to talk about Klopp getting sacked, and
That's the that's the difference between Pep and Klopp. And I don't know how much it is due to money. Like if you ask Klopp, he's gonna say, "Of course I want to spend the money. We just don't have it." Simple as that.
right.
But Klopp is loyal, and he was way too loyal with all those players, the Hendersons, the Fabinhos, like a year too late. Where Pep will never, ever, ever let
Right,
it get
he
to
wouldn't
that
have held
point.
on to them for that long.
He like there was their starting 11 Liverpool starting 11 in 2019. They had one change compared to the starting 11 of 2 years ago when they had the terrible season. That's insane. And Liverpool, like you
Sadio,
said,
your boy Sadio.
like that's pretty much the only change. But back to that point, you got to be ruthless and you got to have the money. So it's one thing to say, "Oh, we got to get rid of these guys and get somebody else." But if you don't have the funds, then what are you going to do? You're not going to go with somebody less.
Yeah,
And Liverpool have to sell to buy. Man City don't need to sell to buy.
That whole money thing, I don't really understand it. Like Javi said, he's never been in that position, so we don't know, first of all. And second, how many coaches have we seen succeed with, mid to low table teams that have been given a job at Arsenal, at Chelsea, throughout the last 30 years that
Graham
have
Potter?
failed miserably.
But he wasn't given. I mean, that's a mistake.
on whose part, his or Chelsea's?
Chelsea. You hired the guy and you sack him without having
Yeah, fair enough.
like
I thought it was a mistake on his part as well.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah,
kinda
but
hard.
at the same time, it took Guardiola only one season of professional coaching to win everything there is to win.
Yeah.
however, if Pep was at Chelsea, he gets sacked the first year, just like at Man City, because there's no patience. Graham Potter,
Well, Chelsea's different because
Chelsea's a whole mess.
That's
They've spent $1 billion the past 2 years, so that's not even like
a whole mess because anybody, whoever you are, I don't care who you are, you're going to get sacked after 2 games if you don't win 2 games. So that's a problem. Teams like Tottenham will give you a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Arsenal will give you a little bit more time. So pretty much every other team except Chelsea, you'll have a little bit of time to at least.
It's insane.
Change some things.
I don't know what's going on at Chelsea, but that's a whole different.
That's what happens when you have a lot of money but no plan.
Well, that's the owner, right?
Yeah.
He came in and Graham Potter was his guy, and then all of a sudden, it's not, and then now Pochettino's your guy, but it's not really working. So Pochettino's going to get fired in the next 3-4 games, like.
And I think, when Pep left Barcelona, they were in such a shock and they were missing that figure so much that it took them up until now, up until another homegrown
Right.
talent like Xavi has taken the seat.
Yeah.
Up until then, they were just lost at sea. And that was because of the huge impact that Pep had on them.
Yeah. Well, a club like Barcelona, I don't care how good of a coach you are, unless you went through the academy or unless you have some sort of extended history with that club, you're never gonna. I don't think you can succeed at that club. I mean, that's what they say all the time. Even what was the guy that they just had before Xavi?
There were so many. I don't even. Can't
What
remember.
was the guy? He played for Barcelona, which is why they got him.
Koeman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even him, right? He was terrible. But the only reason they got him is because he was he was like an ex-Barca figure and things like that. You can't, a team like Barcelona, you cannot be outside of you have to live and breathe that culture for
I
years.
mean, Frank
before, I
Rijkaard
think.
didn't play for them and was pretty successful with the Ronaldinho generation.
Well, I think
That was
now,
the start of it.
Yeah, I think like now, like you said, after Pep, it's very difficult to put somebody who can succeed unless you have like Xavi's the perfect candidate. That was an easy selection. If they wouldn't have gone with him, it would have been. I mean, he's an easy selection because he lived and breathed not just the Barca way, but the Barca way under Pep. So,
I think the club and the coach, manager, whatever you want to call it, they have to like fit. It has to be a perfect fit in order to work. Like you
for
look
clubs
at
like that, yes.
you look at Coleman, right? He was at Everton, then somehow magically Barcelona. Carlo Ancelotti, Everton, Real Madrid. If like they're obviously Carlo's an amazing coach, but if you have to go down to Everton when they're struggling to find relegation, and it didn't work out, but now you're winning Champions League with Real Madrid, like there's like levels to it. So it has to be the right fit because if I don't know, I feel like some coaches, if you take them down, they would still succeed. Others, if you take them from Real Madrid to Everton, they wouldn't. So it just depends on the style and the fit. And
So, Georgie, we concluded that he's not overrated, right?
no, he's not overrated.
Is he the best in history?
Best in history. I don't know.
He just doesn't want to say that because he's a Liverpool fan.
No, it's very, very hard for me to say best in history. But that's with anything. Like if you ask me best player in the world, like it's just hard to say best in history. He's up there, obviously.
I think he is. You don't hear about any other manager change the game as much as he did. You hear a little bit about I forget his name already. The Netherlands, the one who was a
Cruyff,
mentor,
yeah.
Cruyff. So you hear about Johan Cruyff. But if you look at some of the seriously, if you look at some of the tactics from back in the day,
The offside trap.
the offside
Yeah,
traps. I mean, that's just hilarious.
yeah.
By the way, you look at that and you're like, oh, he had such a big influence, and then you see some of the videos of all 11 guys, almost everyone except the
Evaporated
goalkeeper
football
just go.
tactics.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pep changed the game in such a way that had an influence that showed people. I think the biggest difference was he showed people the effect that a coach can have on the success of a team. I think that was the reason why he was so successful, or that's the reason why he's talked about as probably one of the best in history, is because he. Yeah, I mean, nowadays you see a lot of coaches who are trying to be like Pep, with the knowledge, with the tactics, with the way that they coach. So I think that's why he's the GOAT.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So was Man City a struggling side when he came?
No,
Was
But
Bayern
they-
Munich a struggling side when he went?
absolutely not.
So it's did he change them for the better? Of course, no doubt.
Yeah,
But
which is already hard enough to do.
yeah, but you're
But it's like when you let's take like a game. So if you take Manchester City versus a team that's at the bottom of the Premier League or in like the Championship, for example, and they win 8-0. They did what they had to do. They can't control the fact that the other team is terrible or whatever. So it's kind of like saying like, well, of course he's winning. Well, he can't control the fact that he's
Yeah.
got money. He can't control the fact that he's got money.
Did-
He's doing what he is
But, like-
expected to do
But
with that.
here's the question. Here's the main question. Sure, they were not a bad team. They may have been underperforming Man City when he took them, but ask a diehard 70-year-old Man City fan when was the best soccer he's seen in the home stadium.
well, yeah, he's gonna say Pep because that's when they were one of the best. But if you ask that same City fan, what was the best moment of his life? When, like, Man City was
Aguero, 2012.
like.
Yeah, but those are moments. Those are moments
But
that are
the-
of
that-
individual brilliance is why
But
it
you-
happened.
And I'm not saying he's again. I think he's really good. Obviously, one of the best in the ever.
not ready to.
Well, it's
give
like,
up.
it's like saying this. It's like, what are you more excited about? Your team winning on the last day to stay in a relegation battle? Are you going to remember that more than your team finishing in 10th place in the table? Of course you are.
No, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'm not talking about that moment. I'm talking about they won the league way before Pep got there. Like,
Right, but
they were winning things. They were going to finals. They were like, it wasn't like they were never doing that. And then all of a sudden Pep came and like took them to the glory
Of
days.
course.
So like,
But
they
it
won the
wasn't consistent. They weren't on top for the last 4 or 5 years. It was they had just won their first title. They just won their first title. And what did they get Pep right after they fired Mancini?
I think so. I
I-
think he
Because-
was after Mancini. Yeah.
So
Wait, wasn't Pellegrini in there? Pellegrini.
it was Pellegrini, and then was it Pellegrini and then Mancini, or Mancini and then Pellegrini?
I have no. I think
But either way, my point is Manchester City had just barely started getting to the top. And for them, I think it was, do we want to stay consistently at the top, or do we want this to be like one of those, like Chelsea, where Chelsea wins the Premier League, and then they finish 6th or 7th or whatever, and then they win the Premier League again, and then it goes back and forth. I think with them, they made the right decision in saying, we've gotten here, but now we need somebody who can keep us here.
I think when you hire any other coach in the world except Guardiola, you are hiring a new coach. When you hire Guardiola, you are starting a new era on your club.
who's better, Sir Alex? Does Sir Alex compare to Guardiola?
Sir, I think it's a very different comparison in my opinion, because Sir Alex was not a coach. He was probably the greatest manager. So that's the difference I think between Guardiola and Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson was the greatest manager of a club. The way the standards that he held, the way that Manchester United was looked at under his tenure, and he didn't have the best start either.
No,
So he had, and it wasn't for a while that finally they got to the top, and he just did a good job of keeping them there. But if you listen to the tactics and the ex-players like the class of '92, all those guys talk about the training and all that. They didn't have very advanced tactics. They were just better players. And they talk about how it was old school and there was very little tactics and very little actual change of playing styles in order to fit your opponent, things like that. I think that's why Pep is looked at differently, is because Pep is a good manager. Probably say he's a great manager in terms of man management and things like that. But the reason why he is so big is because of the way he changed the playing style of the game. Where Sir Alex Ferguson didn't change the playing styles of anyone. He was a fantastic manager in creating a dynasty that lasted a long time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
It's two
I
very
hate- I
different
hate
types of
both
coaches.
teams, so I don't. It doesn't
very
really matter. But
And Man U was very, very dominant too.
Yeah.
In terms of revenue and things like that back in the day as well.
like the players that
There was
like,
no
they-
big six. There may have been a big three, maybe,
Yeah.
but there was no big six back then.
You look at some of the players that play for that Man United team. You have you're talking about Nicky Butt. You're talking about, not that they're not good players, but
Even Gary Neville. If you think
Gary
about Gary
Neville,
Neville
Phil
nowadays, yeah,
like
those guys weren't
Wes
really.
Brown, center back.
Yeah.
like the biggest signing was, I mean 30 million back then was a lot, but Rio Ferdinand, that was a big one. But it's insane. 20 years.
I think
dominant.
if you put it this way, if I was to go into like a college on soccer, Ferguson would be teaching a class on how to create like a dynasty, how to hold standards to a certain level, versus Pep Guardiola would be just straight up tactics. I think that's what I would like to learn from each one of them.
And
And Sir Alex Ferguson teaches in college now.
Didn't he do it in New York?
I don't know what it's like a legit one of those legit top schools. He teaches a class on that kind of stuff.
and Sir Alex never tested himself elsewhere too.
Yeah. I don't know.
Pep has been that dominant in 3 different countries.
Anyways, we can move on from the Pep.
It just feels like where
Geor-
the money's at.
Georgie-
We'll never
Pep
get
is there.
anything out of Georgie.
Georgie
No.
can admit that he's a better manager than Jurgen Klopp.
Am I
That's-
going to ever
yeah.
admit that? No.
Nah, of course not. unless they switch. Unless Guardiola goes to
Just like
Liverpool
Dimitrovic
and Klopp goes to
did.
Manchester City, then he'll be better.
No.
I like Klopp too. Listen, I like Klopp. I think it's another really good coach who does things a little bit differently. I like this era right now that we're in. You have so many good coaches, and even just a couple of years ago, I think up until the point where Jose left the Premier League, there was Conte, there was Jose, there was Pochettino, Guardiola, Klopp, all of these coaches in the Premier League. I enjoy watching games in the Premier League when it used to be Guardiola versus Mourinho back in Spain.
Oh boy.
Like people,
poking each other. Yeah,
if you made a poster, it would be the two managers on the poster as opposed to like the players traditionally,
Yeah.
just because of how important the coaches were and how good it was. So I think there was a time in the Premier League, maybe not so much right now. I think a couple of years ago where you had all of the best managers in the world in the Premier League.
and most of those got sacked, which is crazy.
That's what happens in the Premier League if you don't perform, man.
It's insane.
It's the hardest league in the world. So that's why one of the reasons why it's the hardest league in the world as well. Speaking about the Premier League though, transfers. Pedro has been wanting to do this for a while, rating the top transfers. And the transfer market is over now. But we've actually gotten a chance to see a couple of transfers so far, whether they've worked out or not. So Pedro, do you have a top 3 yet or no?
No, I don't.
All right, let's just start with a good transfer.
Like, are you talking about a team that got a good transfer,
Yeah.
or like a player that came in?
Like a team that did well in the transfer market by picking a specific player or whatever. It could be as a whole too. Is there any club that's done a good job?
As a market evaluating everything, incoming and outgoing. I think you gotta give it to Brighton. I think specifically the sale of Moises Caicedo for that amount of money, it is unbelievable. To
And
me.
how much did McAllister go for?
30.
Yeah, which kind of balances.
For a team like Brighton, that's still pretty good.
We robbed Brian. There's no way. If Liverpool decides to sell McAllister now, he's going for 70, 80,
How much did my Caicedo go for?
over 100.
120, I think.
So
million
you're saying
euros.
close to $150 million just for those two guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to also have a coach like De Zerbi who is able to attract somebody like Ansu Fati on loan. I mean, that is an unbelievable market in my opinion.
Well, the good thing about Brighton is that there's one of those teams that do well as a team. Not necessarily, they're not looking for superstars. They're looking for people who can fit into the system of players who are not such big names right now and still do well because they're doing a good job. So for Brighton, you're not trying to attract people that are gonna throw off the balance of your team, regardless of how good they are. Like Mudryk, right? Like you're not gonna try and get a Mudryk type player. You're gonna try and get players who can fit in your system. They've done a good job.
It's a system at Brian.
That's the
yes.
It's
and
very
it's been
systematic.
like that for
thing. And
a few
that's why they
seasons.
got rid of Trossard.
Yeah.
Because Trossard was having issues, and they're like, okay, we're not dealing with this drama. Ship him off to Arsenal. Worked out well for both teams, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, good transfer on both sides. Everybody wins. But Brian, like, Danny Welbeck, is he starting in 17 out of all the Premier League teams? Probably not. And he's like playing really, really good at Brian, and it's working.
Yeah.
So it's
Environment.
It's a club that really trusts what they are doing and their process, which also has excellent scouts too, because this is not the first season that they are able to make such huge profit from players, and also has a great coach in place that they are giving plenty of power on the player decision as well. So yeah, I think Brighton is probably the one that surprised me the most this summer. I think West Ham is also up there. The way they spent that Declan Rice money was very, very, very smart. I was surprised to see that Ward-Prowse ended up there too. I thought he was ready for a bigger team even. And it's working out so far for them too. I really like how they spend that Declan Rice money though.
yeah. I mean, what you have, Prowse, what's his name, Kudus that just came over from
Yeah, Mohamed Kudus, yeah.
like amazing. Then somebody just got injured. Who just got injured right before half? So that's the Mexican national team player.
Edson Alvarez.
Yeah, he got.
Did he just get injured?
I think he just got injured. Yeah.
That sucks.
I don't know exactly the injury, but I saw he got subbed off before half. But all those players, just those 3 players alone, like
Yeah.
with the Declan Rice money.
Well, I think they're going for stability as well. That was a smart transfer market for them, but they're going for stability so that they're not. They can kind of have a better idea of where they're going to finish next year in the Premier League and try to avoid the relegation battle.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna be challenging for top 8, this top 6 possibly.
Yeah. I mean, if I was the board, I'd probably say if you can get Europa League, that would be really good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Brian and West Ham have had really good windows.
It was surprising too on the West Ham case because they were very slow to make any moves. And people were starting to wonder whether even David Moyes was gonna just resign or something was gonna happen on the boardroom. But yeah, everything is working out right now. It seems pretty well oiled. So to my surprise, it looks like they're probably gonna end up being top 10 for sure.
But is Moyes good enough coach or manager to take West Ham to the next level?
That's a tough question. Because I can see him doing what he did at Everton, for example, with West Ham, which is always being in that top 10 conversation, eventually making it to something like the Europa League, then dropping a little bit in the next season. It's hard for West Ham to be next level, though, and become a top 6 team, because that will mean that they will have to spend a lot of money. And not just by selling players like Declan Rice, but being able to keep that talent and then spend 100, 200 mil per window, which is probably impossible for them.
I think Moyes can only take them up to a certain part, and then they're gonna have to get another manager, a different manager.
But they tried that, right? Moyes was there. He did okay for I think 2 seasons. Then they were in the relegation battle. Got rid of him. I don't even remember who they brought in. Didn't do well. Luckily, they stayed above. Then Moyes came back, kept them up last season, and then obviously did really good in Europe. And then now they're back, and they're looking really good. I mean, you do need, like, as good of a player as Declan Rice is, and obviously he's West Ham through and through, but you have to, if somebody's offering 100 plus mil for a player, you got to get rid of him. And
like Mo Salah this summer.
That's a different. That's different. That's different.
Yeah, Liverpool's slightly different. I think West Ham. You're right. You have to, because that money goes a lot further than Manchester City or even Liverpool. To be honest, I think that money goes a lot further at a team like West Ham.
It's always a risky decision, though, because it's not guaranteed that it will go farther, right? Because you could always end up buying some other players that don't work out, and then
right. But you don't get the opportunity as often. How many times is West Ham going to be able to sell a player for over $100 million?
Every time they have a halfly decent England national team player, seems like, in this inflated
It's just
market.
for them, it's just an opportunity that they probably can't pass. And for them, it's easier to replace if they do a good job with the moves like they did this year. It's not a difficult choice to.
And Declan Rice wants to make that move.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
That's the thing as well.
If a player wants to go, they're gonna go. I think he probably would have left a year before if everything worked out. And I know Man City was in for him, and Arsenal obviously. So it's not like he didn't have choices, but it was only a matter of time before Declan Rice made the move to a higher team. There's no way he stays there for the rest of his career.
How'd you rate Liverpool's transfer market?
In terms of who we brought in, I give it like 9 out of 10. In terms of the players and the depth we have, it's not.
Yeah, but that's always been your problem.
That's always a problem.
Good thing is you guys have started well.
Yeah, I mean, McAllister, obviously we brought in, but we don't have a true number 6. And Van Dijk suspended, Konate got injured. We're playing with an 18-year-old in the academy, who's done amazing in the past 2 games. But like, if that's your resort to go to an academy player to step in like this early in the season, we're not even like 5 games in.
But would you rather spend a lot of money on one player or spend less money on, or sorry, the same amount of money on 3 or 4 to help you with your depth issues?
I mean, I just think if Liverpool would have added one more player, then there would have been a really good window. But we're still pretty thin.
But
attacking wise, we're fine because you have all these options.
Yeah.
So attacking wise, we're fine. Midfield is rebuilt to an extent. Dominic Szoboszlai is the best I'm going to say best signing of the season of any Premier League team. The guy is probably,
he's good.
he's been the best player for a while for Liverpool. Like beyond Salah, beyond anybody else. He's going to be.
You didn't even mention Nunez in that.
He's Steven Gerrard-esque, like that. Just Steven, yeah. Anything he does is Steven. Like,
how much did they pay for him?
70 something.
That's
70.
not bad in today's market. That's a very good player, but that's not like a.
That's like 40, 50 million, like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's insane. And McAllister for 30 million.
Yeah.
That's robbery. That
And Dominic was a great player at Leipzig
yeah.
and also at Salzburg. But he was not like elite, top, world class type of talent. But he's just exploded at Liverpool.
Yeah, it's like another thing to look at what Jurgen Klopp brings. So you got rid of Henderson, Fabinho, and I don't know whoever else, and then you bring in the Hungary national team captain. So Dominic, McAllister, who just won the World Cup, Endo. A lot of people don't like that signing, but Endo's a good signing. You need the depth. Two, very experienced Bundesliga proven player who was the captain for Stuttgart for a long time and the captain for a national team. So you're bringing in a lot of character into the locker room because you lost James Milner, who's playing at Brighton as a right back now. So you don't have that experience. You lost your captain, Henderson, and the English national team captain. So you're losing that experience, but you're also bringing in youthful experience that's going to be here for the next 5 years, potentially.
Yeah.
I would be concerned if I was a Liverpool fan, though, even though I'm wearing this, because of the fact that it seems like it's not really something that it's properly planned, right? Not only due to the fact that players like Fabinho or Hendo may have left a couple of years too late, but also because of the fact that even though you were still keeping them, there was not really a whole plan on when to sell them and who to replace them with. Because, all those opportunities came from the Saudi market. And had they had a plan in place, there were names that were available to fill that sixth spot or to fill some needs that Liverpool has on the midfield that just were not available at that late stage when they decided to make that move or sell them, which could have been avoided from the board or Jurgen Klopp having proper plan in place, which I think it's concerning because that's what's going to happen with Mohamed Salah in a couple of seasons or next season.
Or in January.
Yeah, we need a plan, and we need we need to know who are the names that we're gonna seek after for them to stay at the top, which may be again a little bit too late now, but I think it's still within reach.
I think it's Liverpool needs to be careful especially because of last year that they don't go into a phase where once again, because what did they finish last season? Like 7th or 8th or something like that? If they do that again, and then it just becomes normal that they're starting to finish in spots like that, they need to be careful right now. Like Pedro says, they need to have a plan to say, okay, what are we doing to make sure that last season was just a one-off, and then we're back to competing top 2, top 3, and always fighting for the title. Because I think the problem with Liverpool is that they're starting to get complacent with we just don't spend as much money. We don't have the budget. We don't spend as much money. And Klopp can use that excuse only for a certain amount of time before Liverpool just becomes Liverpool in the last decade, or a little bit more than the last decade. So I think they just need to be careful because otherwise that's going to happen. And then Klopp's not going to be there for very long.
Oh, no,
and then it's going to be a whole nother rebuilding
that's
after, what was it, maybe two good years of Liverpool being at the top, where you could extend it.
The problem with the whole transfer thing, under Brendan Rodgers, Liverpool had a transfer committee of 3 people, and that was like under FSG when they first came, and they set that up. It didn't work out with Brendan Rodgers. Obviously, for a few years, he got sacked. Like we buy Andy Carroll for 40 million or whatever. Terrible. Anyway, then you move on to Jurgen Klopp, who came in and obviously wants to change everything and does it his own way. So they got rid of that committee, and they hired Julian Ward, who was one of the best like recruiters and finding talent, which the Manes, the Salahs, the Allison, like selling Coutinho, like just like Brian did. We sold Coutinho for 130 mil to Barcelona. We used that money to rebuild Liverpool to be what Liverpool is now. The Salah, Allison, the Firmino's, Manes, like all those players were brought in to fit Jurgen Klopp under the system. That guy, Julian Ward, left 2 years ago. Everybody on that committee left and has been leaving one by one ever since Jurgen Klopp took over. So now, as we saw in the past 2 years, Liverpool didn't really make any transfers. It's like FSG are just not, the owners are just, we don't have the money. If you want the money, sell. It. We're going to buy the players. If you want to be the best, you can't sell your best player, even though it worked once. But how many buys do you have that it doesn't work out? Luckily, so far, it looks like we've brought in the players that fit the system the club likes to play and are doing well. But I agree with what you said about if Henderson and Fabinho didn't leave due to Saudi Arabia, Liverpool were playing with Fabinho and Henderson for another season. And we're finishing not top 10. It's not going to be...
Yeah,
no
and
way.
even though, like, while they're still playing, there was not a single plan on who they're gonna replace them with.
Yeah, and
It's very reactive, and that's not something a top team like Liverpool can afford.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is we dodged the bullet with not getting Caicedo, because we went in for Caicedo last moments for 100 million, and thankfully he was very loyal to Chelsea, and he went there. So
did you dodge a bigger bullet with that than Arsenal did with Mudryk? Arsenal dodged the biggest bullet of all.
The Lazio goalkeeper has more goals in 2023 than Mudryk.
But like, maybe Caicedo works out different in Liverpool. Maybe Mudryk works out different.
It's environment, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about with Welbeck, right?
Yeah. So you never really know. However, I mean, all we can do is base it off the fact that he's not doing well with Chelsea and they spend the money and it's not working out. But speaking about Arsenal, Kai Havertz.
I told you right at the beginning, I didn't like him.
I believed in him this season.
I've never seen anything good come out of him.
Second round pick on the fantasy draft.
That's embarrassing, Pedro.
Yeah.
How are you doing in the fantasy, by the way?
I haven't checked that in a while.
I'm doing well. I
think I'm like 500, like 2 wins, 2 losses.
I completely forgot about after the
I
international
think I'm
break.
second.
Yeah, I'm mid-table. But anyway.
But, okay, so Arsenal, you bring in Havertz.
I didn't like Havertz.
You didn't like...
I told you that one was a weird one. And surprising to me that Arteta was talking about how much they wanted him and that he was a great signing. I didn't like him because I don't think he brings anything special. I think he was average on a Chelsea team that was also kind of average, even though they had good players.
But he was... this is my question. This is where I don't understand with Arsenal and Arteta. Havertz plays a false 9 at Chelsea. And we can blame it on the fact they didn't have a striker, a true goal scorer last year. But you play as a false 9, and Arteta says, "Oh, we love that. We want him in Arsenal." He's not going to play a false 9 in Arsenal. He's going to play in midfield. He was never going to play as... You're not going to take Saka. You're not Martinelli. You're not going to take Jesus or Nketiah. So
no, but we have had some injury problems, and like Gabriel Jesus always gets injured. I don't know what the thought process was. I think they just needed they needed one more person, and I think that was probably the best that they could have gotten.
how much? 70 million?
I can't remember how much it was.
Surely you could have found somebody.
When Kai started in Leverkusen, I think he played more of a cam role, so that's probably what Mikel was thinking. But I still rate Arsenal's market pretty highly because they identified the gaps and they signed top talent at those gaps.
Besides him, for me, I mean, Declan Rice was a big one because Xhaka was always going to leave, and he was at the end of his time at Arsenal. So that one was a good one because Declan Rice is a pretty safe bet. Like that's one that you're not going to be like, is he going to be good? Is he going to be bad? You were pretty sure he was going to be good, especially because he was so good at a team like West Ham, right? So that one was a pretty easy one. I think Raya is an interesting one, but it makes a little bit of sense the fact that we're playing Champions League now, because they just gave him his first Premier League game, which people were surprised about because they're saying Ramsdale hasn't done anything wrong. Why would you change him? But I think Arteta's smart enough to have a plan to say, look, we're playing enough games this year where he can go back and forth. Typically, you switch him when we weren't in the Champions League, you would give Ramsdale the Premier League games, and then you'd give Matt Turner the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup or whatever. I think now, as those two goalkeepers are typically number ones, you can give one of them Premier League and you can give one of them Champions League, or you can even flip-flop between both of them. There's not as many Champions League games, but there's enough for it to make sense because they're still going to be playing Champions League football. So I wonder who they're going to put in for the Champions League because they just put Raya in for the Premier League game. I wonder if he's going to put Ramsdale as a Champions League or if they're going to keep Raya in. Because if they keep Raya in, then they cause a bigger problem. But I think there's enough games to flip both of them.
So, before I forget, Arteta had a quote over the weekend saying, I'm still a young manager. I'm still learning the trade, and I've been only coaching like 3 years, like in a Premier League team, whatever. And he said something that I completely like. It. I mean, you're a goalkeeping coach, and obviously you're a coach, but like for me, it made no sense. He said, in some games, I want to change the goalkeeper from minute 60 to 90, just because the game changes. So he's pretty much saying he's willing, in the Premier League, at some point, he's going to take out a goalkeeper in the 60th minute. He said he didn't have an option before. So he's pretty much saying to Turner, like, you're just not good enough.
Right.
So now you're telling me you're going to waste a substitution on a goalkeeper. Make it make sense.
Well, what did you say? You said this in the last podcast. What does Raya do better
He's good with his feet.
All right. So if you're chasing a game, and you have to push numbers forward, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is that you put in somebody like Raya, and Raya is just going to have to play as a center back, essentially, right? You start launching balls forward, and he's going to have to be much better with his distribution. So I think of things like that. I think if the goalkeepers are different enough, it kind of makes a little bit of sense in that aspect. I don't know if there's any other.
But would you as a coach, like,
It's a crazy tactic because nobody does that.
like,
Nobody ever changes their goalkeeper unless they get injured. Nobody ever changes their goalkeeper, even when they have nightmares.
it just like when he said that, I was like, wait.
I think he may not be too serious about that, honestly. I think he's just trying to keep those two guys motivated. And
Now watch
keep them
next game,
challenged.
60th minute.
Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't.
Who's the obviously they're completely different. Ramsdale has done nothing wrong from all the games I watched. He's an
But that's also a tough one because when people say, "Well, he's done nothing wrong," it's almost like saying, "If it's not broke, don't fix it." But if you really want to be the best, if it's not broke, but you can make it better, you make it better.
Is Raya a better shot stopper than Ramsdale?
I don't know.
I think he's up there, honestly.
Ramsdale is amazing when it comes to like
He's
Reaction
got,
saves and
reaction.
things like
Yeah,
that.
it's
he's
a
not
tough
good with
one.
his feet, obviously, or not as good as Arteta wants him. And also another question about Arteta: is he tinkering too much this season? Because Arsenal look, I don't want to say off, but off. I would say off balance.
I think he's trying to prevent what happened last season from happening again this season, where at the end of the season it started falling. And that was one of the criticisms that they were getting, or not criticisms, but that was one of the parts that people kept saying about Arsenal throughout the whole season when they were having such a good season. People were like, "Oh, well, it's just a matter of time before Arsenal's going to have, they're going to drop. They're going to drop. It's just a matter of time." I think he's trying to prevent that from happening by doing things like bringing in Raya, saying if he's a better goalkeeper, I don't care how good Aaron Ramsdale's playing. If he's a better goalkeeper, we need to get someone who can compete with him. And the same thing with all the other players is saying we need to find the best possible solution for us to be not just consistent, but also have a little bit of depth. So
Who right now, you look at Arsenal, you have Declan Rice starter, Odegaard captain starter, Saka starter, Martinelli starter, Jesus starter. Who's the other one?
well, but that's the thing though. So that's the difference that I think now that he's trying to make is saying that before we didn't have any depth. So if any of those guys went down, there was nothing we could do.
So like Martinelli got hurt, Trossard comes in
Right.
now, and like
So now you have like Trossard off the bench, right? And if Trossard's starting, that means Martinelli, Saka, one of those guys is on the bench.
yeah.
You have Nketiah, who has been getting better, who now is probably a real option off the bench as opposed to just the guy who's just there on the bench. So now, because he's now actually fighting for a spot, and then you got Havertz, you got those players.
Yeah.
So you have a little bit more depth off the bench now in case anybody in Arsenal gets injured, because again, if they do, now you have Trossard as a starter as opposed to just a sub.
Oh yeah, the other guy's Timber. That he's out. for the
Timber,
season.
well, and the other one is Timber, and Timber you can't really judge because he got injured 2 games in.
I
or
was so
whatever.
excited for that signing too.
I didn't know too much about him. It's hard when they play in different leagues.
But I mean,
Arsenal, like Pedro said, they filled the gaps. They didn't go crazy because Arsenal cannot go crazy, but they have been, which is a bit weird because if you look at the last few seasons of transfer market, Arsenal has actually been one of the top spenders, which is surprising. I think the difference from Arsenal now versus the difference from Arsenal 5, 6 years ago is that we're able to afford, or we're actually investing a little bit more money,
The board is willing to spend it now.
and we're starting to invest in legit players versus good players who are only going to get us so far. Like before, you would buy people like Tomiyasu, who's okay, he's like pretty good, but he's not going to be a starter on a Premier League winning team. You buy people like Lacazette or Aubameyang, who are also pretty good players, but again, I don't think those players are going to win you the Premier League.
And Thomas Partey was the biggest signing for like 4 or 5 years. And it's nice to see them spending money, but it's also trust that Mikel Arteta has earned as well.
Yeah. But again, that and like Declan Rice is a player you could see on a Premier League winning team. Yeah. Trossard is pretty damn good. I think he's shown he's done a really good job. I think Odegaard was a big signing for me because I always liked Odegaard, and he's one of those players that you find very few players who are technically as good as him in the world. I think he's one of the best technical players in the world. So I think you give like Odegaard an opportunity to really shine where he doesn't get that much time at Real Madrid. And I think you have, on top of that, you trust Mikel Arteta, you let him actually have a plan. And a big part of the success is also with Edu, the sporting director, or whatever his official title is, because he's done a really good job as well.
Yeah, I mean, you need the board to be like spending the money, otherwise Arteta's not gonna be able to deal with.
To close this whole market conversation, and leaving aside whatever Chelsea's doing with their money, which is bizarre, gotta give it to Everton and Wolves too for having awful transfer markets, in my opinion. And it's very interesting to me because even though you may be at 15th to 20th or 18th team in the league, you're still in the Prem. You still have way more money than 99% of the clubs in the entire world. You should be able to identify talent within your reach that you can attract within your budget to fill gaps and to improve your team season after season, because that TV rights money is insane. And like I said, you are more able than most teams out there, right? It's always the thing with the Prem. The top 6 is very strong, but then you move to the 15th, 16th, 17th team, and I'm not sure if they will compare to, La Liga's 16th, 17th team and be on the upper hand,
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me to see teams that have that kind of power and that kind of money not really making anything out of it until you come across a Brighton or a Brentford or teams that are really studying the market, really studying their needs and placing money where there needs to be.
But like with Everton, they got Beto, they got Danjuma, Danjuma was not one of the best players in the La Liga, but like a really
decent,
really good player. Yeah. And then you have Sean Dyche as the coach, who is anti-football to begin with. So Everton are in shambles, and they have been for the past few seasons. And I'm happy for it, but it's like they're spending money, but you have a coach that doesn't want to play football. So.
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem with teams like that is that they kind of try and play it safe. If you are getting Sean Dyche as your manager, you are not taking any risks. You are getting someone. It's like getting a person who
the Honda Civic of coaches.
Yeah, like they've been in the Premier League for a long time. They know how it works. It's a good option. Versus if you take someone like what I don't know how you pronounce it, Reims from France, Will Still.
Oh yeah.
He's, what is he, Belgian, maybe? He's Belgian, French. Anyway, that guy who they actually, I listened to a podcast about how they got him and he talks about it, but they went to like his training sessions and they liked what they saw, and he was at a not small, but he was in Belgium, I think, when they got him. But those are conversations that they probably never even end. Those names don't ever enter into the thoughts of the Everton board. They're like, okay, we want somebody with experience, which is great. You need someone with experience. But then think about Arsenal. Arsenal took a huge leap of faith by getting Arteta, who had no head coaching experience, and look at how it's paid off for them. So I think it all starts with your department of your scouting department, not just the people who scout the players, but the people who also scout the coaches and who picks the coaches, because a really good coach doesn't always mean that they have a lot of experience.
Yeah. I mean, Leeds took a huge risk with Bielsa on championship. De Zerbi, who is right now, a miracle, and everybody is saying that he's the greatest coach alive. He did awful in Las Palmas in Spain. He got fired within 4 months, and then he was coaching in Shakhtar Donetsk, which is a one club type of league. So not really proven, and then given a job at the Prem. You gotta take risks, for sure.
I think that's the problem with teams like Everton and Wolves, is that very few times are they going to really take a risk. Maybe not Wolves, but Everton.
I actually like Wolves.
Everton, like Wolves is a little, because they've had a few different managers.
Wolves is just George Mendes money making machine.
Well, didn't Nuno did very well at Wolves?
George Mendes guy.
So I think Everton is kind of like Crystal Palace, the teams that like. Maybe Crystal Palace got
like Palace.
Crystal Palace got
up until 5 years ago when they signed people like Olise and
when they got
Mark Wehi and
so they took a risk on like Vieira, for example. That was a risk,
and a bunch of Everett Easy.
But like I think you need to, if you really want to move the club forward, you have to start getting away from people like Sean Dyche,
Sam Allardyce.
I was gonna say big Sam Allardyce. You have to start moving away from those types of people.
What are the odds?
Even David Moyes. Even David Moyes.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to take the risk. Otherwise, depends. Some of these clubs, though, the crazy thing is, some of these clubs are happy to just be, as long as they're out of the relegation battle or in the relegation battle, but they stay up.
Yep.
But you can only do that for so long before you get clubs like, I'm just trying to think of a club that used to be in the Premier League a long time ago, and now they're League 2 or League 3. There's quite a few. So I don't know. I think you have to take the risk if you want to do it, if you want to really move the club forward.
Newcastle, Eddie Howe didn't really. I mean, he was good at Bournemouth, but was he ever going to be taking Newcastle to the Champions League? And obviously the money they spend and all that helped too. But
and Newcastle is a good example, because even though they have all the money, doesn't mean they have more money than Todd Bowley does at Chelsea, and they haven't spent nearly anywhere near as much.
Eddie Howe, because he brought in players that,
but they had a plan.
Yeah,
they brought in the right players, and they spent the amount of money that they needed to spend, and they still haven't spent anywhere near as much money as they could spend. They're just being smart about how they're doing it.
Yeah, there's been a decent amount of good transfers coming into the Premier League. Like, I'm actually very surprised. I mean, we talked about in the first episode how you have players that are playing in the Champions League willing to go down to, I don't know, Brentford, Sheffield, Nottingham Forest. Forest have a really good team. Like, I watched the game. Who did they just play? They ended up Burnley. They have a really, like, you have White Gibbs, you have, and then you have Sangare, who just got there. You have Hudson Odoi from Chelsea, who got, his career got destroyed at Chelsea, came back, has more goals than half their team. Like, they're building, like, a really, really good, solid team. Again, though, you have all those players. On paper, they look really, really good. But if it's the same coaching style as before, how far is that going to get you?
And taking risks, right? Coming into the Prem and signing 40 billion players the first season, just taking a bunch of risks. Noticing the opportunity in front of them with all that money and moving the market.
Yeah. It's always going to be hard, though. It sounds easy, though. It sounds easy, but when you're competing against Manchester City and all these teams who can spend so much money, you have to have a really, really good scouting department or a really good academy. There's some teams that have a really good academy, but you have to have, who used to have a really good academy, or I don't know if they still do, Southampton. Literally half of Arsenal's team was Southampton Academy.
Yeah. But again, the team with less, the least money or budget in the Prem still outspends, everybody but Barcelona, Madrid, and La Liga.
Yeah, but they're in the Prem with all the teams that are still spending more than them, right? So if you take them, if you take teams like those teams in the Prem and put them in La Liga, they probably finish 4th or 5th.
Right, but it's the players that those La Liga teams are signing or that they have, the ones that you should be targeting, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are Sheffield, you should not be competing for signings with Newcastle or a mid-table in the Premier. You should be competing with the rest of Europe who cannot spend the same way that you're spending.
But don't you think just because it's a team in the Premier League, that price is 2-3x?
There is
Yeah.
a little bit of that. There's a little bit.
And
of
if you're English,
Yeah, if
Especially
you're
price
English,
doubles if you're
if
English.
you're English, like 10 times the amount.
So I think the transfers we'll get to see as the Premier League goes on, because you'll be able to see how well they do or how bad they do.
Dominic signing in the season.
So far, yeah, been good. And Liverpool's had a good start, so I know you're not worried, Georgie.
No.
Which is great.
Yeah. Well, I messaged you before.
It means
before
it
the
just
Wolves
means
game.
listen, Georgie already had an excuse.
No, I didn't
prior
have an
to their
excuse.
last game.
But okay, I'm gonna finish with like the Liverpool talk with us. Please explain to me how it's possible. Liverpool have had 12 games after the international break to be the first game on a Saturday early morning. 12 times. The second team after that is with 6 after an international break. That is absolute like okay. You're
First of all,
laughing.
I can't. First of all, I can't
theory.
fact check this. I don't know where to even start. Where'd you
I-
hear this? Did you add them up?
No, Sky Sports talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. It makes no sense.
That's a fair point.
Jurgen Klopp complains about it every single year, and
fair
every
point.
single year Liverpool played 2-3 more games after international games at the early kickoff. It makes
Fair
no
point.
sense to me.
So he already had his excuse ready. Luckily, they won. Liverpool won. So yeah,
Diaz-
but he had his excuse ready.
Diaz, Darwin, all the South American guys, they came back on Friday.
Yeah,
What are you supposed to do with that?
it's
It ma-
okay. Doesn't matter because you won.
It doesn't matter because we won. However, if we didn't, that was the first time in I want to say 7 games Liverpool have won a game after international break playing on a Saturday.
Yeah.
That's it makes no sense. Premier League is out to get us, man.
That's a smart way to get you because not many people would take that into consideration or realize how many times more Liverpool has played like that.
Yeah, it adds up.
It's all right. No excuses just yet. Don't need to use that. Save that excuse for later. So the next time there's an
4
international
weeks
break.
ago, Liverpool played the early game.
You can bring that up on the next international break, and we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if Liverpool also gets the early slot.
If Liverpool get that slot.
Also, is the international break out after the Premier League schedule, or is the Premier League schedule out
I
after?
have no idea.
'Cause
I mean,
that also makes a difference.
but it's TV rights, right? Like in England, they don't show the 3 o'clock games. Like so, 3 o'clock, the 10 o'clock games here. The England do not show any of those
Yeah,
games on TV.
I heard that's changing for next season. But
I hope so.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I mean, I know it's money involved and all that stuff, but it makes zero
I
sense.
just
to me.
wanted to close the podcast with a fact that will make you very happy, which is that Alexander Mitrovic team tied an Uzbekistani team 1-1 in the
Did he play? He was probably on the bench.
Asian Champions
He was
League.
probably injured.
How
If he
does
would have been
that
on,
make
if he would have been on, they would have scored. They would
How
have
does-
won.
that
Because we all know
doesn't-
you hate him.
I do not. I don't. I don't
Georgie's
hate
gotta think
my.
about him.
That's my Eastern
If he was a
European
Liverpool, he'd
brother.
be the greatest striker ever.
No,
Absolutely.
that's Andy Carroll type of a striker. We don't need that.
All right, last little bit. Is it too early for Champions League predictions?
In
Who
terms
wins?
of
Who wins it?
It's too early.
It's not too early, but if you want accurate ones, it may be. But I mean,
All right, so if you had to just really quickly, if you had to, who would it be? You think Manchester City wins it again with Holland? Pep, by the way, Pep did say the first one was the easiest. He said that in a speech when they asked him if he thought he could win it again. He's like, well, the first one's the hardest one. It gets easier after that.
I don't know. I mean, that's true. I guess once you see it, it's like.
I mean,
I
yeah,
think
PSG's in shambles.
Oh, PSG.
PSG's in shambles.
Bayern is in
Bayern is
shambles.
not doing great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one team in Europe
Barcelona is not the same Barcelona that they used to be. Real Madrid also not the same team that
Real
they used to be.
Madrid-
But you can never count
you
them
can-
out.
That's
man.
Jude
You can never
Bellingham,
count them out underneath.
My boy Jude.
Well, Jude makes.
But
a
they
big
don't have a
difference.
striker this year, so that's gonna be very tough for them.
How many times did they win it with Zinedine Zidane, and how many times did they win it with Ancelotti?
Was it down? They
I
won
think
3 in a
it's-
row. No.
Yeah, I think it's
And
3
then
and
Ancelotti
2.
won one.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, okay, fair enough. You can, but that's a given one. Real Madrid's always going to get to the semifinals at least. I can't remember the stat, but it was like the last 5 or 6 years they've made it to the semifinals or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, right now, seeing how Liverpool is, Bayern, PSG, Real Madrid
Is there
struggling.
anybody you think can have a chance that you would honestly back them right now, or not back them, but say they actually have a pretty good chance besides Manchester City and
Barcelona.
Real Madrid? Barcelona, really?
Yeah.
I can't even say any. Like, I mean, today was the first round, right? Like first
Yeah.
games. I watched most of those games. No team. Obviously,
Barcelona didn't Barcelona win like 5-0?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
but it
5-0.
was Antwerp too.
Yeah,
Um,
but then Man City played Red Star, and that was a struggle. So
yeah, but Barcelona has Joao Felix, which fits just
Yeah.
like a glove on that
I like
tactical
Felix a lot.
approach that Xavi has. They also signed a right back, which they needed for the last 15 years.
The
Joao
youngster.
Cancelo.
Then what's his name? The 17-year-old.
Yamal. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a baller that guy is! It's insane.
And he
So
scored on
I
his-
think
he
they
scored
have
on
a
his-
chance, honestly.
So Barcelona's back. Barcelona hasn't won it since Messi. They haven't won it since Messi
Yeah.
back in
Right.
the day. And was that was the Manchester United one, or did they win it after that? I think that was
I
that
think
was it.
that was a Manchester United one.
Yeah, I was like, and that was
Really?
yeah, that's crazy,
It's
isn't
been
it?
that long. Wow.
That
Well,
was
ever
like
since
20,
then it's been
that was like
Madrid.
2010. That was like 2010.
Wait,
Can you believe that? Let me look it up real quick. Let me look it up because we just
2010.
talk here on the podcast
2010.
without actually looking it up.
2010. That's interesting, but it could be. But no, it could be because there was a Real Madrid, Chelsea won it, Liverpool won it, Man City won it, but Real Madrid won it 5 times, I think, in the past like 10 years.
I think it's been a long time. So
Because in the past 10 years,
the last time Barcelona won it.
Chelsea might have won it twice in this span. Actually,
Hold on, we're going by season. All right, so the last time Barcelona was in 2014, 2015.
yeah,
They beat Juventus 3-1.
Yeah.
yeah. So ever since then, it's been pretty much the Real Madrid.
That's crazy though. 10 years still.
Yeah, that's insane. It is.
Yeah, I think they have a chance. In fact, they may have a bigger chance than Real Madrid. Real Madrid just needs a striker. They cannot win a Champions League with Joselu. If they do, that will be just...
Real Madrid in the Champions League though. It doesn't matter who they have.
Yeah.
All right, realistically, Arsenal's chances. Pretty good, I would say, in my opinion. Pretty good.
Honestly,
Pretty damn good. I think we make it to the semis, at least.
well, at least.
At least.
Are you gonna beat PSV tomorrow?
Arsenal in the semis of the Champions League.
Mikel
With the form that we had in the Premier League,
Well,
we need less. It's less time in the Champions League.
Yeah,
We don't
but
need to
it
sustain
takes-
it for so long.
No.
takes
but
a lot of character though to win on those ties, on quarterfinals, things
I think
like
we have
that.
a good chance. I think semifinals. I think if I would be surprised if Arsenal get knocked out in the quarterfinals.
I think they will.
is the luck of the draw. Like if you end up against,
True.
Of course, but
if you're lucky like Man City last year.
regardless, you're gonna play a team that's gonna always be difficult.
If you're lucky like Man City last year, you're gonna play Red Star 5 times and get to the final. So it's easy. It's easy goings there.
Didn't they play Real Madrid? In...
That was the one game, yeah. But
Anyway, it's a little early for that.
It's very early because any team at this moment, like Arsenal, could be terrible in the Premier League for the first 2 months, and then in January
disagree.
starts,
January.
and then they start ramping it up. Because right now teams are gonna coast for the most part, unless you're in the Group D, I think, where it's Milan, Dortmund.
right.
PSG.
The Champions League doesn't surprise as much when it comes to who gets out of the group stages.
Yeah, like teams usually like City today look like we're just going through the motions,
Right.
and most teams are gonna do that for the first
Right.
3-4 games, but then the real games start quarterfinals, and then that's when if your team's in form then you have a good chance. If not, struggle.
We'll talk about it as we go. All right. Any closing thoughts?
I already said my piece about Mitrovic.
I already said about
Fair
my
enough.
boy.
I think we
Dominic
should.
Szoboszlai.
I think from now on we all need to bring a fun fact, an interesting statistic, or something like that to the end of the podcast.
All right,
That was Pedro's.
I'll give you one. Szoboszlai.
Mm-hmm.
This is a crazy fact. He was clocked to be the second fastest EPO player ever. And
Behind who?
I don't know who the
Kyle
first one
Walker.
was.
Well, here's the thing. I think Kyle Walker's probably the fastest, but I think they didn't start measuring this until 2015, 2016 at least. So it's not like it's not really like he was the fastest in history. He's the fastest since they've been tracking,
No,
which they
not
haven't
the
been doing it
fastest.
for very long.
Second. I didn't
Sorry,
say
second fastest.
Yeah. And that was when
I could be the fastest.
he sprinted
My hamstrings were good.
30 to 40 yards sprint to make a tackle.
Yeah.
The guy's a G.
I wonder how accurate that is as well.
He's the man.
'Cause
Of
are
the
they
moment
are they
for
taking into
sure.
consideration the exact angle at which they're running and what the distance is?
Are they taking into consideration the wind?
That's true. That
Are
makes
you
a big
running
difference.
with the wind or against the wind?
Well, of course he's got it. There was no wind against him because otherwise he wouldn't have gotten second. He had conditions have to be good in order for him to do that.
Maybe he's that
Anyway.
fast that he's going against the wind and he
Nah,
got
I don't think
second.
he's that fast.
Ballon d'Or winner.
Oh, easily.
I don't have a fun fact. All I have to say is that Arsenal are going to get to at least the semifinals of the Champions League.
Wait. You made this prediction last year. Arsenal. Yeah.
When
You
is it?
you kept telling me Arsenal are going to win the Premier League. If we're in top,
Oh, we were so close. We
They
bottled
were
it at the end,
very
but we were so
close.
close.
if Arsenal are on top by January, they're going to win it. They're going to win it.
I think I said no. I think it was like the end when I said if they got like 9 points out of the next 12 or something like that, we would win it. But we didn't. We bottled it.
I'll
It's
give you
okay.
another crazy fact. Liverpool lost the Premier League within 3 points, combined 4 years, 3 years.
It doesn't matter. They still lost.
By 1 point every
It doesn't
single
matter.
damn season.
All right. Well, that's it for this one. Thank you for following along on the longest episode of this podcast, which we're about. It's going to probably be close to an hour and a half.
If
Or
you
a little
watch
bit
this
more.
by the end,
Which
I
you
don't
know
know,
what you know what this means though. 90 minutes with Coach Javi.
wow.
90 minutes with Coach Javi. That's how long we sat here. First time in the history of this podcast.
Wow. Sonny, by the way, sorry, man. I know you're not going to watch this. We didn't talk about
We-
Syria.
We didn't talk about Sonny. That's why he's not going to watch it.
Yeah, that's true. Too.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning along, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Yep.
See ya.